what specific actions do I need to do to make that happen? If I do this, then what's going to happen? So we like to have all these really big ideas and try all these new things and get really excited and want to change the whole entire world. And yes, 100% you could. But maybe your actions to get there are slightly different than the ones that you think you're need.
Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm super excited to have Esty Rappaport with us. She is a very unique individual, a brilliant individual, and she's going to talk to us about 3 unspoken skills every entrepreneur needs. Thank you so much for joining us today, Esty.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So when you and I spoke on the pre-interview, there were so many things you might not realize. I don't know if I told you this. There's just so many different things you brought up about the different thinking skills and how things connected. You kind of blew my mind. And it sounds arrogant to say I don't usually have that happen, but I have a master's degree in psych, 51 years old. I've been around a little bit. So usually I've heard something about something. There's quite a few things you said that really intrigued me. So I'm really grateful to have you here and excited to have you share a little bit about what you do and how you can help people with that. So maybe first, if you just start a little bit, share a little bit about your background and what got you into helping people to, focus on things like growth mindset and just, their brain skills and all those different things.
Yeah, so I'll go back to when I was in 5th grade. I still struggled with reading. I was able to read, but I spent a lot of time out of the classroom, in tutors and just trying to get better at it. And my parents were spending nice good money, like $2,000 a month, just like for top tutors, and wasn't like really getting any real results. And so it was like, okay, there's time to do something else. And they brought in what's called Feuerstein mediators. These are people who don't teach you anything about reading. We didn't do like nothing to do with reading, but rather they worked on my thinking skills, like how my brain was currently thinking. Because thinking is not one big thing. Thinking is actually made up of 28 parts, 28 thinking skills that affect everything you do because it's how you're actually thinking. So it's behind everything else. So I started improving on those skills, and that not obviously helped me improve my reading, but not just my reading, because it was behind everything else. So many other areas in my life improved. So yes, in school, but also like socially and my confidence and everything just became so much better because the skills behind all those skills were super strong.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, like I don't know how much to think. So then when I knew that I was going to learn this and I would work with people with this. And so when I was 17, I started getting training in it. And I liked it. I started working with it. At that point, I was working more with kids. And I started also getting trained in a couple of other methods. But the more I learned about other methods, the more I realized how this one is literally the thing that has the highest ROI because it's behind everything else. So it's not like, oh, I'm learning one specific skill. I'm learning how to do copywriting. I'm learning, or even like on the emotional level, I'm learning to process emotions. It's the skills behind everything else. So every skill you learn after becomes so much easier. And then I was like, okay, forget everything else. I'm just gonna, not forget, but like the focus isn't on everything else. And I'm gonna just focus on this. And I started working more with entrepreneurs. I love entrepreneurs because first of all, they're older. So like you have more of that conversation versus like working with kids. But entrepreneurs are really like, they're really willing to grow. They want to grow. They want to, like take themselves to the next level because they're ready to face challenges. They're not owning a business if you're not going to face challenges and ready to do the hard work. So it's really, really fun being able to work with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I remember when I first started working in one job and I was working with the general public, doing insurance claims for a very reputable company, but I was working with the general public. And I'd done that for 2 years. And then after 2 years, I got to go into a job where I was working with entrepreneurs and their team members. And it was a whole different world. So share a little bit. We'll probably go down some rabbit holes further in the conversation, but share a little bit. What's the first one of those unspoken skills? Because you and I were talking about, you said, there's 28 skills, a lot of stuff. And you and I were brainstorming some of the specific things that specifically entrepreneurs work with or have trouble with, or maybe have challenges with they don't see, what's one of those first ones that really seems to perhaps maybe anything from make things uncomfortable or wreak havoc in their lives without them realizing it?
Yeah, so the first one I would say is obviously, like you said, is one of the 28. But this is one that causes a lot of additional anguish and just like money and time spent on things that doesn't need to be spent. And that is defining the problem. A lot of times entrepreneurs, like, they're action takers. They want to get things done. Oh, there's an issue. Let's try this. Let's do that. Let's take action. And they get in right away and they do it. And it's amazing. Like, go and take action. But if you just take 5 minutes, sometimes it's a little bit more complicating. It needs 2 hours, like with a meeting or whatever. But if you just take the time to identify what the actual problem is, not the symptoms, not the side effects, not anything else, what is causing all those issues, you're going to save so much time because you're solving the actual problem, and then everything else will just take care of itself.
That's awesome. I think I look back at my career and having been in a large corporation in different parts, but eventually the corporate side and whatnot. And I would coach sometimes and work with the entrepreneurial people that were related with the company or, affiliated with the company. And there was such this frustration with entrepreneurs to be in meetings because, just like you said, this propensity for action being better than non-action. And if you've been a parent or if you've been on the planet long enough, you come to realize that sometimes, whether it's, not sending that letter that you're ticked off about, that you want to tell somebody, you can't say that to me, or whatever it is, sometimes non-action is preferred and sometimes slowing things down is preferred. But as entrepreneurs, we have this bias a lot of the times that says, number one, and it's based off of, look, I got here by hustling. I got here by doing, not just by thinking. There's a bias against, and I'll just call it this, and I don't know if anybody's ever taught about it this way, but abstract academics. Like, okay, the person just says, well, I'm smarter than you and I think. We're like, okay, yeah, don't really care. Do you do? Now, if you think and then do, great. But then a lot of the people, and I'm one of those person that actually is sort of right between thinking and doing, and sometimes thinking too much, overthinking slows me down. Whereas there's other people that usually they'll usually make a doer thinker, if that's even such a concept, in my experience, usually makes 5 to 10 times more than a thinker doer in general. Like, because usually they're doing, and they'll make mistakes. And I think of it this way, like I have a friend where I've done investment deals with him before where when we were younger and we just lost our shirts on a couple things, but he's done like 30 of those. So then he's made a killing on others. And I was just like, man, I get my butt handed to me. I was like, I don't want to do that again because my thinking almost paralyzed me. And yet, to your point, there is a certain point which, okay, yeah, just pure action. And you're just going at it 80 miles an hour and you're like, oh, that wasn't even the problem. It's like somebody walks in and, in the office, like, yes, like, no, that's the copy machine guy. We're not selling anything today. You're just giving me a 20-minute sales presentation. It's like, whoa, slow down. So to go into a little bit more about that, you talked about the diagnosing the symptoms versus the problem. What might that look like? So let's say, like, what's a common problem you find, and what does the entrepreneur perhaps usually think it is, and what might they need to be perhaps looking at instead?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go on your point about like overthinking and doing. I am like such a big believer, like you said, like taking action 100%. I think the difference here is, just to clarify for listeners, is that it's not so much about overthinking, should I do this or should I not? Once you make your decision of what to do, go and do it. Don't think about it. But when you're trying to figure out what to do, then, or what the problem is, or what actions you need to take, then you need to get clear on making sure you're doing the right thing. Because if, let's say, you are running a campaign and you're like, it's failing and you need to change things, instead of like just trying all these different things, okay, we're gonna like put more money into Facebook ads, or we're gonna change the headlines, or we're gonna like take a few moments to see what's happening. Are your customers like coming into your landing pages and they're not converting? Are they converting, but then they're asking for refunds, right? Like, what's the actual problem of why they're doing it? So remember, defining the problem, it's not overthinking action, it's overthinking not overthinking, it's taking the time to think about the problem, right? So if you want to actually solve it, what I always like to say is like, whenever you have a challenge, whenever you have a problem, whenever you're not sure what to do, always ask yourself, what is causing this? Okay. And then you're going to get an answer and you're asking yourself again, what is causing that? Or why did that happen? Now, why did that happen is not an amazing question because sometimes it leads to blaming. Like, oh, this person did something now. But if you could do it without blaming, like, why did this happen? Even if someone did make a mistake, it was like, okay, someone sent the wrong email. But instead of blaming, oh, because Joe like sent the email, you rather say because the email title, the email subject line was wrong, right? Like, make sure it's just not with blaming, but understand why it happened and keep on asking that to yourself until you feel like you got to the source. Now, sometimes you actually did. Sometimes you might have to ask yourself one more time. But remember, there's no like, we're not magicians. We're not like God. We don't know everything that's happening. We don't know anything, right? Like, we don't know every single sort of thing. But if as the deep as you could go in your situation with your skill set, with what you have, then it will be easier for you than you did without thinking about what's the problem. As you do this more, you'll get better and better at it.
Okay, so let me give you an example that and maybe help me make a distinction. You mentioned a great concept, like so ad campaign. So on one hand, there is micro testing. So you're doing, let's say, Facebook ads, Google ads, something like that. And you say, okay, I'm investing $5 to $10 to $20, some very, for this person, absorbable amount. And I'm micro testing things. I'm going to do 5 to 10 iterations. Okay. There's a bit less of a concern of, okay, if I have a knee-jerk reaction, if I just try something that fails versus, oh, no, wait, we shouldn't be doing Facebook campaigns at all. Our audience is on TikTok or something like that. So when you talk about defining the problem, what is it about a symptom that is perhaps different, or how can you mentioned this concept of going deeper, the question behind the question. And of course, most of us, we do the best we can to drill down. But let's say something like an ad campaign. What are some of the things you see that people do where they're taking action and they think, oh, I've already fixed the problem, and they're just making it worse, versus what might it look like when they're actually starting to get at least closer to, if not even finding the problem, at least eliminating the other, at least making progress towards narrowing it down. How does that look differently in sort of in a real situation, like, let's say, ads?
Yeah, that was actually what you said about like being on Facebook versus TikTok is a super common problem. So I really like that you brought that up. And I think what happens is that, like you said, like we think we already fixed everything. What happens is we're bringing in all our previous work, all our emotions, all our effort that we put in already, that we're not asking the question objectively. We have to come out with a fresh face. Better if you have like someone else like who works with you, and I don't know, like how, like if you have an employee, if you don't have a partner or someone like else that could help you, that you could bounce the questions off and just ask them like, what's the problem here, right? You want to have a discussion about it. You could develop this yourself to do it as a skill, as completely objective, but if you start off with someone else, it's easier. That way it's not like, okay, I already fixed this and I already tried this, and forget everything you tried. Let's start fresh, okay? What's the problem here? Why is this not converting? What is actually happening here? It's it is a challenge. I'm not gonna lie. The thinking skills are something that take time. It's not like a skill like that you could just like do, like, let's say, watch a YouTube, listen to a podcast, and you'll just learn them, because we need outside triggers to help our brain recognize that we're doing something wrong. Because we've been doing these thinking skills our whole lives, we think we've been doing them the best way. So it's like extra challenging to realize that you have a thinking skill that's not improved. And if you want to do it by yourself, you really have to be able to have the guts to really make sure that you're doing it objectively.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of the things also we talked about, I'm going to kind of go back and forth between the three main ones. So we'd also talked a little bit about a growth mindset and how it can help if you have that growth mindset, and it can create more time for relationships, fun activities. How does that happen? And then how does that relate to some of the thinking skills? Because I know when I talk to our kids, and I just, gosh, this thing keeps sticking in my head, this idea that what the prefrontal cortex and the decision-making skills don't evolve until age 24 or something. We have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, and so they're tired of already hearing that from us. But you see, at least it's apparent to me how there's certain thinking skills they have that are so like, yes, they got them down pat, easy. And there's other things, whether it's anticipating, maybe some of it's experience-based because they're younger and we're older. But what are some of those thinking skills that help develop a growth mindset? And again, how can that perhaps lead to more time for relationships, for fun, for activities, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, actually, even making decisions requires other thinking skills, right? So thinking skills, the main one of the cognitive functions required to make decisions is comparing. Now, the reason why that is because usually when we compare, we don't compare correctly. We say, like, we walk into Best Buy, we want to buy a new laptop. Okay, so this one has a bigger screen, but this one is cheaper. But you're not comparing on the same parameter. You have to say, this one is $2,000, this one's $3,000, this one is a 12-inch screen, this is an 18-inch screen, right? And based on your priorities of parameters, you have a much easier time comparing. So every skill that you use without realizing it, you're using other cognitive functions in order to do that skill. So for a decision, it would be comparing. But back to your thing about growth mindset. Growth mindset is usually, it's not actually a cognitive function, but it is very, very highly related to the cognitive function of perseverance. Right? When you have a growth mindset, then you persevere. And the opposite of perseverance, just for you to understand, is like when it's weak, is called blocking. It's literally when you feel like you have a wall in your brain and you just can't go any further. I know every single entrepreneur, even though they know how to persevere and they've overcome challenges, there has been times when you just feel stuck. I just can't do this anymore. And that comes back to perseverance, right? And to having a growth mindset. Now, you can develop your growth mindset to overcome this. So one great way to improve this growth mindset is, first of all, to ask yourself questions, right? So instead of saying like, oh, I'm stuck, it's like, okay, what do I need to do to get out of this? Or what could help me to get out of this? The higher quality questions you ask, the higher quality answers you're going to get. So first of all, ask your question. And also watch the language that you use, right? The favorite little word yet, just adding the word yet to everything. So I can't do this yet will help you also 100% develop that growth mindset.
Awesome. So one of the things that you also mentioned is that you help entrepreneurs in a way that helps them become more efficient and more effective in a way, and also helps them just get more calm, more inner peace about what they do. Break down each of those for a second. So, and thank you, because understand, I never even thought about the idea that perseverance, persistence, that sort of a flavor of a skill, how connected it is to growth, because that's something, that saying, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And I think that's probably maybe the closest saying I could think of if someone were to say to me, okay, Wade, you got one sentence, explain to me what growth is. Well, I mean, it's not linear. It's definitely not linear. Sometimes it feels linear, or, you go to a growth workshop, you're like, oh, I just went to a growth weekend. Everything's about, like, the entire universe is mine. And then, Monday morning hits, you're like, oh, wait, these things that I left before, they're still here. They didn't resolve themselves. I thought, there was something in the magic Kool-Aid or something that was going to make this all stop. And it unfortunately did not do that. What are some of the skills or specific, how can a person start first understanding the difference between being efficient and effective? And then what are some of the skills that are tied to that help entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so let's first break down the difference. What's the difference between efficient and effective? So efficient is being able to do something quickly in an easy manner, and it's like high quality, right? So if you're doing something quickly but it's not high quality and it's taking you like too long, then if you're doing something quickly, so it's not taking you too long, but it's not coming at high quality, it's not efficient, because you're not getting what you want. So you need to make sure you have all those components in order for it to be efficient. Now, effective is that it works in the ultimate way that it works, right? So either you're effective with your product is effective and it's working, or you're effective to other people, your services, to your employees, things like that are being effective. Now, how come a person isn't being efficient or effective? What is making a task take you very long to do? Why does it take you so long to do it? Because of a cognitive function. If you have a weak thinking skill, you're not going to be able to be either efficient or effective, both of them. So let's start with efficient, right? For example, if let's say you struggle with the cognitive function of labeling. Labeling means being able to give things the correct names, being able to use names, being able to talk with names, so that way both your brain can understand it better and can organize the information, and also people who you're talking to and communicating with can understand it. So if you're not using labels, then what's happening? You're telling your employees to go and like do certain tasks, or you're telling your clients like you're going to give them certain results, but they want something else, or your employees aren't understanding what you're talking about, then you're going to be wasting a lot of time trying to figure out, oh, I meant this, you meant this. You know, like you ever got into an argument with someone and like halfway through you realize you're talking about two different things? That's labeling, right? So if there's a weak cognitive function, you're not going to be very efficient. Effective is the same way, right? Really popular cognitive function related to effectiveness is considering another person's perspective, right? If you can't consider another person's perspective, which is super common, by the way, even people who think that they are don't always in many situations, then you're going to have a hard time being effective. You're not going to understand how to communicate how to communicate to them in a way that they understand that they can do what they need to do.
Wow. Yeah. It's so interesting that, the whole being able to understand something from another person's perspective, that's basically everything from sales to empathy to, understanding customers to keeping customers kind of wrapped all up into one. What is that? So going back now, I feel like we're having like two programs. We're going back to a regular scheduled program. What is one of the others? You mentioned there was three. What's the second most critical thinking skill that can help an entrepreneur work less and make more?
Yes, so I think another super one, this is like helps so much with working less, and obviously to make more, is to be precise. Be precise is actually the only cognitive function that comes up twice, because there's three thinking phases. One, how we take in information. Two, how we process it. And three, how we tell the world we know what we know. Being precise comes in once when we're taking in the information, we're getting the right information. Someone's telling us a phone number, we're making sure we're taking the right phone number. And being precise in the output phase, in the third phase, is when we're typing an email, we're making sure we're writing the right thing. When we're sending the email to the right person, we're dialing a phone number, right? In the output, when we're telling the world what we know, we're making sure we're precise. So like, how many times have you give a client a price and either it was too much or it was too little compared to what it was actually meant to be, right? That is being precise. Or what about a client calling you and telling you about like information that they need you to help them and you just didn't take down all the information correctly? Now, it's true that there are two ways, and it could be that the person didn't tell it to you, but it is, as an entrepreneur, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are getting the information correctly and that you re-asking them and you're like checking for errors to make sure that it is correct.
Yeah, I remember one of the first episodes. I remember the first season of, I think most reality TV shows, the first season or two, they're pretty unscripted, and then they become scripted. I don't know for sure, but I've heard people say that. It certainly seems that way. But I remember the first season of, I think it was the first season of The Apprentice. There was a group that they did this project, and it was to advertise some sort of event, and they did some sort of project in a brochure. Long story short, their whole presentation was way better than the other groups, but they got the phone number wrong. And this is like 20 something years ago. So, Donald Trump's like, look, and it's funny. I think when he was first starting this, before he got really into the air fired, and he was just like, you could almost see he was so sad for them. He's like, you did so good with this. He said, but you got the phone number wrong. So all this money of this client's money that you would have spent on this, or maybe they did spend it, I forget, but like all of it is now useless because you sent them to the wrong phone. And it was just one of those things. It's kind of like I tell the kids when I coach them in basketball, you do all the work and then you miss a layup. Like the easiest part, because you lost a little focus or you missed something, And I never thought about that, but gosh, the being precise, that is so huge. That's one of the things my wife and my children get annoyed with me, because at times I do my best to speak precisely, kind of like Sheldon from Young Sheldon or from Big Bang Theory. But because I don't know, if you don't say it in a certain way, and I realize it can be annoying at times if you're correcting people, and sometimes I have that I'm going to help you correcting Gene, which is not a good thing because it ticks people off. But at the same time, if you're really looking to, get one thing done and somebody's just that little bit off, it doesn't jive. And I think that's one of the other things when people look at relationships, and you're in any sort of relationship, business relationship, friendship, romantic relationship with somebody, you're with a relationship with them for a long period of time, and all of a sudden you guys just go different directions. Like, what happened? And the analogy I always think of is if you're from Florida and you start out in Southeast Florida, and somebody says, okay, we're going on a road trip. And let's say, I don't know the name of a city, but a lot of cities that there's the same city in two parts of the country, right? Okay, if I say we're going to Washington, I say, great. So we start going up I-95, and all of a sudden we hit Jacksonville, and one person's like, yeah, we're going north, right? The other person's like, no, we're going west on I-10. Like, I'm going to go to Washington, right? Yeah, we're going to Washington. Come on. And this whole argument, and we thought, and of course, one's going to Washington, D.C., one's going to Washington State. And in relationships, that can be painful, emotionally and whatnot, if you didn't realize that, or it can just be like, oh, okay, well, I guess, we enjoyed our time together. Now you go that way and I go that way. But in business, that can be more than just emotionally painful. It can be financially at times even, maybe catastrophic or whatnot. You look at all the different reasons why entrepreneurial businesses don't make it. And I've been blessed to do enough tap dancing iterations or whatever the table stay in business. And I certainly, I believe there's a God. If there's also entrepreneurial gods or whatever, I'm grateful, because I know I've done some stupid stuff at times and stuff that's kicked my butt. But going back to, the need to be precise with things, I think it's something I find when I talk to younger kids sometimes, they brush that off. Like, God, this is that. And I think maybe it's probably an age thing, I'm guessing, because it's not just, my kids do it sometimes. I see so many kids do it, and I'm like, yeah, someday you're going to, when you're in love and Susie's going to Washington and you want to go to Washington, D.C., and you're going to be like, oh, wow, it would have been nice to know that ahead of time, or building a business or whatever it is. So yeah, I could see that being such a big deal. What is it that you find when you're working with people that is maybe something that, and it might be one of the three, but something that they think they have mastered? Because you mentioned, a lot of people think that they're effective. A lot of people, it's like that joke, everybody thinks they've got a sense of humor. And of course, a lot of people don't. Very few people think they're a jerk. There's a few people who think they are, and they take pride in it. Most people, and certainly most people, don't think they're insensitive. They think, well, I'm very sensitive. And then there's this group of people that's like, no, you're a lot of things. You're wonderful. You're not sensitive. What are common blind spots that people have as far as thinking skills?
Yeah, I think many of them. I mean, there are some that, like, let's say, understanding space, like orientation in space, rights and lefts. So, like, if you don't know your rights and lefts, or you struggle with it, so like, it's obvious, it's easy to know. But then, like, when you do sometimes consider another person's perspective, so you think a lot of times you do, like, I'm thinking of their perspective, but like you said, you're not thinking about it when you're writing your messaging. You're not thinking about it when you're creating your sales pitch. So that one is for sure one that many people think that they have. I think also comparing, because like we said before, comparing is one that a lot of people, like, we compare so much throughout, like, the time, like, so, like, all the time, right? Every time we buy a new outfit, or every time, like, just the whole day, we're sales pages, we're like comparing which one. But a lot of times they don't do correctly. And I think precision also, especially because precision is one that we all do sometimes at things that we care about. If you think about anything that you're good at, then you know that you're precise at that time. You have the motivation for it. So that's actually really good to hear, because that means, like, you have it in you and you could just develop it more into other areas, and you just have to put that motivation and care about it for those other things. And you could do it. I think sometimes just one more thing about precision is that some people get a little bit confused and think of it as like perfection. It's about understanding when you need to be precise and when not. Like, you don't want a neurosurgeon doing anything on you if they're not like 100% precise. Now, I know business is usually not like neurosurgeon type of things, but it can cost you a ton of money. So you do have to use your thinking skills, right? None of these things are like black and white rules. They're all understanding for the situation, what's the best thinking skill that you need and whether it makes sense for right now for you to be precise or not.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, that is if my children were here right now and my wife, they'd be giving you a high five or an amen on that. So that's something that's a little challenge sometimes. One of the things we had also talked about in the pre-interview was just how languaging impacts a growth mindset. What do you find, you mentioned a little bit already, like using the word yet. What are some of the other ways that just even people's languaging sometimes either supports them really well or maybe puts them into a corner where all of a sudden now they've almost painted themselves into a corner where now they really, it's harder to get out of it. It's hard to, to move forward.
Yeah, so we all know, I mean, at least entrepreneurs who listen to podcasts like these, like our growing ones, they know how much languages affect, like the words we use affect our actions, affect our brain, and like affect everything that we do. I think that the struggle with this is that sometimes we don't want to lie, right? Some people don't like the law of attraction because then it makes them feel like, okay, like I'm pretending something that I'm not, right? So the point of the growth mindset language is being able to watch the words that you're using and see if it's helping you achieve your goal or it's stopping you from achieving your goal. If you continue down this path of using the words that you're using and your actions reflect on those words, is that going to help you do what you want to do? I'll give you an example myself. So let's say way back when I started doing email marketing, I was really bad at it. I didn't want to do it. I was like, I'm not good at it. When in school, I didn't do any writing. I had all my friends write my writings for me. I never did any of them. And I was like one of the foundational things that I pushed off till very late in my business that obviously cost me a lot of money, ultimately, and lost money of not using it earlier. And there was a point when I realized I'm talking about growth mindset and I am saying that I am not a writer, so I can't do it. I was like, you know what? Fine. So I'm going to send bad emails. I am still doing what I need to do, right? I am still starting the email marketing. I am not telling myself that I'm the best writer out there and that I'm making tons of money from this and making all those lies. Instead, I'm changing the words to something that was related for right now to what's going to help me move forward. So first I said, I'm going to send bad emails, and I was going to learn more about email marketing. And I invested quite a bit in it, in understanding and learning about it. And today, I can't say like you would want to hire me as a writer and I would get paid millions for it, but it does do and bring me a lot of money into my business because of that skill. So think about something that you think that you can do, and how could you say it, even in not like the positive way, but just how could you say it in a way that's still going to help you move a little bit closer to your goal?
I really like that. I really am not a fan of the fake it till you make it, because for a couple reasons. One, because it can lead people to then feel that you lied to them and your intention might not be to lie. Now, some people, their intention is to lie and they say, well, wait, I was trying to lie, so sorry. But a lot of times people are not trying to lie. They're trying to project something. They're trying to do something. And I just think that it's probably cost me money over the years in the short run to tell people what my limitations are on certain things, but it's helped my reputation, at least to the best that I'm aware of, tremendously. And I've been blessed to have parents. Dad's an entrepreneur, mom's very much a brilliant woman, a stay-at-home mom by choice, thinker, philosopher, that sort of a person, and would help my dad with the business, running it in different pieces, just the sort of coaching him through it and whatnot. And they always just instill that concept of, you just say what's true. And because the right person is going to be okay with that, and it's the right person for you, the right match, not the, they're a bad person or a good person, but the person who's okay with that is going to be the right person. The person who's not, the wrong person. And so, for example, when I would ever launch a course for the first time, I always had some sort of experience with it. Like maybe I'd, let's say, done some private coaching with it or something. So I'd had some success. And when I would run the course the first time as, let's say, a group program, I would charge a lower amount. And I would tell people, I'd say, look, just so you know, I'm charging a lower amount than I'll be charging in the future. And I didn't use this as a sales closing tactic. Not that I'm against it. I just don't find that works so well to say, I'll be raising it next time, so sign up. No, I don't. I find it's a pressure that does not attract, at least for me, good clients. It can get cash, but it doesn't get me the right client anyway. But saying to somebody, just so you know, I've done this in a individual situation with 2 or 3 clients. Here's the results we've had. I'm doing a group setting. So what I'm learning now that I've not yet mastered is not what I'm going to teach you, but the best way to teach you the next number of weeks or in a group. And so just so you know, I'm going to charge you a lesser rate, or even if it was hourly work, I'd say I'm going to charge you a lesser rate than I'm going to be charging in 6 months from now, because I know what the result is worth. But I also acknowledge that right now I don't have it mastered. And so rather than me, having that be something that hurts you, where you say, oh gosh, now Wade's learning the craft, I want you to be able to be, patient with it. Or I might just say, I'm just going to charge you for the result, and just say, I'm going to help you with the result. And I can't promise the deadline, but just things like that. Again, for some people, for people who maybe haven't been around business a lot, it was like, oh, well, I wanted it quicker and this and that. And it's like, oh, so you want the guy who'll tell you, or the gal that'll tell you that you'll make 6 figures in 12 weeks from scratch, out of thin air. Great. Take that course. That pretty much is non-existent. It doesn't really happen. And you can always, of course, point backwards and say, well, if you would have bought Bitcoin, and I know this one guy who bought it here and it went up and before it crashed, or this one gal or whatever. Great. Yes, of course. You can always look backward and say, if you knew the lotto numbers, but realistically, from a percentage standpoint, the number of people that consistently do that sort of stuff, even the best people in the world, like Warren Buffett, as far as investing, they don't do that. He's described his investing strategy as, I think he says what, sloth or laziness bordering on sloth of just how lazy it is, because they invest in really good companies. What do you find is that third thing that entrepreneurs maybe struggle with that, again, if they could see it, would make a huge impact in what they do?
Yes, this one is called understanding reality. Now, ultimately what it is about cause and effect, or actually making it practical. Entrepreneurs have these really big ideas and they're really good, and go for every single one of them. I am not telling you none of your dreams are impossible. I'm not telling you you can't do any crazy things. But instead of having these like you said, right, I'm going to make 6 figures in 12 weeks. You could still make 6 figures in 12 weeks. But you have to understand that it might not be that course that you bought, right? How practically understanding the cause and effect. What specific actions do I need to do to make that happen? If I do this, then what's going to happen? So we like to have all these really big ideas and try all these new things and get really excited and want to change the whole entire world. And yes, 100% you could. But maybe your actions to get there are slightly different than the ones that you think you're need.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that's definitely a huge one. So how would you say, for somebody who then says, okay, I've got this really big plan, it sounds exciting, but I do have that voice, and it's not, there's all these different voices people talk about, the imposter, the doubter, the skeptic, the, whatever it might be. Assuming we don't have a lot of, oh, you're not good enough, or you just stink, or, we're past those. We're just more to the, okay, this might or might not work, or this isn't, let's say, the greatest idea. How can a person do that cause and effect, that reality check, in a way that still preserves that entrepreneurial, we'll put it this way, the vision, the positive, I'll call it, being a possibilitist, if that's a word, to say, yeah, this is possible. And keeping that, but not so much false hope, because, we certainly know in marketing, you hear about people say, it was hope marketing. I just threw a bunch of stuff and I hoped it worked. We don't want that. How can a person improve their sort of cause and effect muscle, their understanding reality muscle, without perhaps squashing that visionary dreamer that is often the reason why things do go so well.
Yeah, so I would actually bring in another one of the cognitive functions to answer your question, which is called hypothetical thinking. There we specifically do like if and then. So um don't squash your big vision, right? Instead ask yourself, if I do this, then what's going to happen? And you could bring that into understanding reality, understanding how is that going to work. So just fill in this is what I like, literally, like if you're trying to figure something out and you're like, how should I do this? Make like a whole bunch of if and then statements. Don't like think if it makes sense. Don't think like get your creative juices flowing, right? And then don't say like, no, this is a bad idea. I only need one thing. Get a whole bunch of them. And then eventually you'll find the ones that are actually going to help you and are going to um, make it practical, understand the actual understanding reality of how it could actually work.
Awesome. So you're almost more first tapping into the creative side, and then you're going back and almost reality checking, like saying, okay, this sounds good. This doesn't look good. This probably won't hold up. Yeah, I think that's something, being able to maintain vision and have a reality check. I know when it comes to coaching people or leading people, I'm involved in a few different businesses usually, and I like that. And in one of the businesses, I help coach and train and develop people. And I think that's one of the areas I find people struggle with most is when, their expectations of the team members they supervise. And a lot of the times they just literally, the team member's ability is not what that supervisor or coach's ability thinks it is. And there's a disconnect, or the coach or supervisor doesn't understand what's going on in the marketplace right now. Hey, there's these other forces that are, just something as simple as I work a lot in the insurance industry. Well, anytime you have price increases, well, you kind of have to go on defense, even though you're trying to sell. So even though you're trying to make more sales, now you have a bunch of calls that are coming in, and people are saying, well, what just happened? I guess it's kind of like if you're a broker, an investment broker, and all of a sudden the stock market's down, and some people get that, hey, this is just kind of what happens, and other people are freaking out. So all of a sudden you have a couple of downturns in a month, and your 2 weeks of sales calls or whatever it is that you were going to make stuff happen, you're like, no, I was just trying to maintain what I had. And that was the best decision. That was the smart thing to do. And yet from a very subtle level, an oversimplified level, a person might say, I'm not seeing that. So it should be, you should be selling more. And then again, there's almost like no sense of reality. Awesome. Wow. There's so much to this. And, but I like the way you break it down. How do you help people? What does that look like when somebody comes to you? What are some of the things that entrepreneurs usually coming to you for? And what does that look like as far as you helping them think through that?
Yes, so a lot of entrepreneurs who come to me want to either like just be able to stay more focused, meaning like they know they're putting in a lot of hours, but they're not always prioritizing in their best way, which focusing, prioritizing, all that comes back to cognitive functions, right? Sometimes it's because they are ready to scale, but brain needs to comprehend the systems of like what they're going to need to do. So we don't talk about systems, but we talk about the skills that are going to be required to create the systems, right? So either someone who's struggling or someone who's ready to make a change, they'll come to me, and then we do special brain exercises. We work in small groups, so it's super fun. We can work with like other entrepreneurs, really small, because it's not like courses or stuff. Rather, we do what's called mediation, where I ask questions for your brain to be able to figure out the answers by yourself, and that's where you think about the thinking skills.
So one last question I have for you is this concept of process versus outcome. I know a lot of the times people will talk a lot about, well, everything is process, and process leads to outcome. And some people say, well, outcome's everything. And if you don't get the outcome, process didn't matter. Obviously, both are connected. How do you find that entrepreneurs perhaps struggle with this, and how can they balance that?
Yeah, so most entrepreneurs, from my experience, are very focused on the outcome. And the outcome is super important. All process you want, but if you're not making money and you're not getting to spend time with the people that you love or do your hobbies, process don't mean anything. But also, it's not just outcome, right? It's both. Growth mindset, personally, people who are like hardcore growth mindset, like Carol Dweck, the one who found, or I guess like termed the coin growth mindset based on her research, are really into growth mindset and are really into process and not outcome. I'm not as like hardcore on that, and I do think that we need both. I think that as we focus on our process and we enjoy our process and we improve our process, we get a better outcome. So it's not one or the other. As we work on one, the other one gets better, and vice versa. So, like, go back to everything, not black and white. You use your thinking skills and your judgment for that situation to understand what you need to work on most. And honestly, it takes self-awareness. I'm a huge believer in self-awareness, and that you need, like, you know yourself. I don't know if you know yourself best, but you have the ability to know yourself best. Like, sometimes an outside force helps you, but you do know yourself best, like from all your previous things, and you can take what you learn on the outside to listen to yourself and to understand what is most important for this current moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much. There's so many things that I've picked up from today. I can tell there's so much more to this. We'll put the links in the site, but where can people find you and where can they find out about your podcast?
Yes, so everything is under the Life Picks University. So my podcast is Life Picks University, all socials, website, everything. It's Life Picks, P-I-X, University.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Esti. I really appreciate it. Like I said, there's so much I'm going to be taking forward. I'm going to be looking and digging deeper into your work. For those of you all listening, I really encourage you. Action is important, as we talked about earlier, but as somebody who's done many things without thinking, there are definitely times when getting a little clearer on thinking processes can help. And certainly when we keep seeing the same mistake, that's probably a sign that we need to talk to Esti or somebody like that. So thank you again, Esti, for joining us. And for those of you all listening, as always, I look forward to helping you impact more people and make more money in less time, doing what you do best so you can fully enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Thanks for listening.